Shalom, Israel. Welcome back to part 2 of my belief that the tribe of Dan is the Moors of our history of this world. And we're going into part 2. And we're going there with the Father's word that the whole world has been lied to. So you've been lied to in reference to our Father's commandments. You've been lied to in reference to our Father's laws and His time. You've been lied to about who are the original people of the book. You've been lied to of the original people of the book, their land, their inheritance, where they came from, who took their identity, the markings, the stuff they left behind in their other lands that they were in as well. You're lied to on who are the people of those lands today, claiming they are the original people of the book, the ones that had the relationship with the Most High. And that's the premise that we're going off of, starting with again part 2 of trying to trace the tribe of Dan to the Moors. In part 2, we're going to look at a lot of history. We're going to make sure we close with the word, but we're going to look at a lot of history. We're going to look at everything from Celtics, Black Vikings, Moors, and our European and Spanish history. So if this is stuff that some people don't know about, again, it'll be a good little history lesson of what Shemites, Hamites, where they were at in this world, and some of the stuff that we have created, some of the stuff that we as Shemites are responsible for. And just like in Egypt, not giving the proper due or recognition, as the same way as in America, us being slaves over here, not getting the proper due and recognition of things we did in this land as well. So, the first thing we're going to look at is an old book written in time. The author is a book called Ancient and Modern Britons. And we're going to look at this book to establish some history that may be a little bit different from some of the history that we are looking at nowadays. So the author of this book is David McRitchie. And I'm quoting from Ancient and Modern Britons, Volume 1. I think it goes about to Volume 5. And I'm quoting off page 121. And it says, the Danes were like the Moors, black like them too. They were the Picts. As more than one eminent writer has proved, the title of Rome, Walled Stain, is not confined to the Highland genealogies. It was the actual name of a grim old pagan Dane who ruled over Denmark. It meant dove. So they call this an old pagan Dane back then. Again, if we listen to the word, the Danes were like the Moors, as he cited in this book. And again, this is not a man writing this book in reference to the word. I am using the word. But again, he was talking about sailors. We know the tribe of Dan, they dwelt in their ships. as well as their pagan gods and their pagan things they had set up. And this book is citing one of those things they had in that custom in that part of the world. And again, when they took that Levite with him, he couldn't keep his commandments no better than some other Levites that was there. They took all those pagan stuff and false idols and they barked off. So we look at the tribe of Dan and we see some of the stuff they talk about in their history in this book also lines up with the word about what Dan did when they took off. And we also got to understand, and I think this is so important because we look at the glass kind of half full, or we look at it with like a little prism over our eyes. I think right now we could look at the world and we say that we are under Gentile rule, or we are under Japheth rule. The whole world is. We cannot find a Shemite in authority in this world. I think you can find a limited amount of Hamites that's in authority in this world. And again, you'll see those in Kemet or Africa, back in that land. But not too many nations truly have authority. Japheth is really ruling right now. If you study the word, one of the things you'll see, going back into the time of Hamite when they were in authority, you'll see Nimrod ruling, and again, that was supposed to be the world. Babylon was one of the biggest parts of the world that we look at, but we can see Japheth was chased off into caves and they were hiding. So they definitely weren't in authority. The same way that we can look at Shemites now in deserts, the outskirts of big cities. And when we're in big cities, we're in like plantations or what we call projects here in America. And you'll see that across all these world. But back in Babylonian time, when we look at the Hamites in rule, that was the case. When we look at Israel, the Shemites in rule, we usually only focus on Jerusalem or Israel. And again, you have to give credit to our brother David because he was a righteous ruler over our nation. And we look at what he did was a good thing. But while he was in rule, obeying the Most High, the whole world was under our control. You're talking about what we call the Americas, Europe, Eastern, Australia, Germany. At all points in time in this history, it'll bear out fruit that the Germans had blacks under rule over them. England, they had blacks and rule over them. So Shemites, just like the Hamites, were in rule over all nations when the Father gave us that authority. Just like nowadays, America is a cruel, cruel ruler over the Shemites that's here, or what we call Judah. We have Judah that's spread in Australia. We have Judah that's in China. We have Judah that's in Japan. And they're not treating Judah greatly over there, but they're not treating them as bad as America is over here. The reason why I gave that example is because we can look at Israel, the way they were keeping the commandments, but there were still other nations that had Shemite control over them. In some of these cases, I'm going to call them Danites, that were not teaching and not using the Most High's authority. They were, as we're going to read in some of these books, they had their white women as slaves, like we have slaves here. They were mixing with all sorts of pagan gods and making themselves as gods, putting their names as the authority over every place they pissed at like a dog. So as we look at this, the same way we look at Israel, and the Father gave us the authority over the world at one point in time, we have to look at the Far East as we look at the pyramids and the blacks that ruled over there, Australia, Europe, as well as the Americas, the Shemites, the 12 tribes of Israel, was in rule over every nation. I'm going to still keep reading a little bit of history. Again, Ancient and Modern Britons, Mac Ritchie, page 2. And this one is the Book of the Beginnings. Different book. And this one, it says, the evidence indicates the blacks in ancient times came to Britain from Spain, Felix, Arabia, Egypt, Ethiopia, West Africa, India, Persia, and what is today named Denmark. These Negroes were builders, scientists, masters of ocean travel, and inventors of letters. According to Higgins, they built Stonehenge. Gerald Massey agrees. Page 11, Book of the Beginnings. Now, I'm going to read one more thing. According to Igla Saga, of the two famous sons of Quiduf Theroth, was a tall and handsome like as mother's peoples, but Grimm took after his father, was black and ugly. Grimm's sons Theroth and Iglar were born out in Iceland, repeated the pattern. Theolf was the image of his uncle, tall, handsome, and sunny-natured, and Mini Eagle was black, even uglier than his father, tortuous and incapable, etc. Craggy head, broad nose, heavy jaw, swart visage. See the History of Vikings, Gwyn Jones, page 86. So again, another book, and their description of some of them ugly Vikings, who they put them down, gave a good image of them, from Iceland to Denmark. And those Vikings, those black Vikings, sailed with their snakes and their dragons. Again, we know that Dan, in antiquity, history, again, they were the ones the bearing of snakes. So, this stuff, as we're looking at the word, understanding at the time of King James, at the time of modern Europe coming from what they call them, quote, dark ages, and getting their, quote, enlightenment. All these people in that time in these areas were of black race. In a lot of cases will be Israelites, Shemites. In some cases, it's possible they could have been Hamites. I cannot give you 1,000% of what I'm saying is completely all Shemites. You know, some people are more absolute in their teaching and their studies. I understand that the whole world has been lied to. I understand when I'm going through these studies and the stuff I'm looking at, I understand that the adversary, if I'm giving out any kind of truth that could lead our people to the word, he will distract me, discredit it. He will do anything to keep this knowledge from our people. Because every time that we decide to keep the commandments, every time that we decide to walk in the laws and statutes, every time that we get one thing that leads us to the road, that path of salvation, that puts him closer into hell for that 1,000 years. So, of course, if somebody, you're a liar and a murderer and a cheater, and somebody's closer in your trail to putting you and giving your comeuppance and putting you where you belong, of course, by all means, you're doing everything you can to avoid it. So enjoy the music. Right now, we're going to look at a little bit more pictures along with this music. Some of this stuff is real interesting. A little couple of footnotes along with it. But again, just putting the time periods of what we're looking at when, in most of these cases, these people would have been Shemites, ruling part of the world because the Hamites already had their turn. And these Shemites were ruling the world as the Most High preordained, just like Japheth is ruling the world right now. We know that David kept the commandments, had a lot of blood in his hands for making people keep it, be it be Shemites, be it be Hamites, be it be Japheth. He was making them keep the commandments. But in other places of the world, there are Shemites that were going against the Most High completely, disregarding his laws, his will, and his way. So enjoy the images. Again, a good history study. With everything that we do, may the Most High be praised. Magnify his name, Ahaya Shahaya, Israel. For all the things you must get. Get yourself some. Understand.
Celts of ancient Britain. The Celts appear to be a local name for the Phoenician settlers of Western Europe, who by nature of heritage were Canaanites and therefore the sons of Ham. They were also Shemitics, which are the Hebrews, and then centuries later were called the Moors. These ranges of dates from Shemitic to the Moors goes from 200 BC to 1400 AD.